One night, an Asian woman is jogging alone, when suddenly she is pushed. Charlotte ends up in the hospital where the Tubi Issa Rae tries to wake her from her coma. Charlotte was a nanny to the married couple Will and Michelle Clark. 1 week later, Will tells Michelle that he's not going to his dad's party later that night because his dad, Richard, put off his promotion for vice president to the Richard and Clark Real Estate Company. Michelle deduces that it might have something to do with losing a high-profile client whom ends up flaking on him again that night. Meanwhile, Michelle is busy managing Richard's party, and Will leaves her a voicemail telling her about the high-profile client. Will moves to the bar and asks the bartender for another drink. The bartender then secretly calls someone, saying Will is there, alone. Shortly after, a woman named Melissa arrives, sits next to Will, and starts flirting with him. Meanwhile, after hearing Will's voicemail, Michelle calls him, but he doesn't pick up, so she leaves an assuring voicemail. When Melissa starts touching Will's arm, Will immediately packs up and leaves the bar. However, Melissa runs after him and seduces him, and they end up swallowing each other, unaware that Carlton is taking photos of them. When Michelle tells Richard that Will is currently not in a good headspace, Richard tells her that not promoting him was the right call because the high-profile account is not the only mistake he's made lately. Michelle defends Will, saying he's burnt out from overworking just to impress him, but Richard remains unmoved, coldly saying that it's the nature of the job. Will stares at his wedding ring with guilt before heading home. When Michelle later checks on him at home, Will keeps the conversation short and says he needs to shower. He got a shower the sour milk stank off of him. The next day, we see Michelle's cake, so I don't know why Will went with the pancake. After, Michelle and Lucy head to the park, where Melissa befriends them. Turns out she's a nanny.
What are the chances?
Single crazy white trifler. After checking her references, Michelle hires Melissa as a temporary replacement for Charlotte. The next day, while Will is away for a conference, Melissa moves into the Clark residence. Melissa later sneaks into Will and Michelle's room, looking through drawers. Lucy and Melissa hit it off. And I'm just now wondering why the Clark's daughter is white. Days later, Will comes home and is shocked upon seeing Melissa, but they both fake AF and pretend it's their first time meeting. Michelle asks if Will is feeling okay.
Maybe something I ate.
Yeah, you ate Melissa's kitty. Later, Melissa recalls Carlton asking for payment because her mom, Madison, was 3 months behind on rent, and she'd face eviction if they couldn't pay. When she begged for an extension because Madison is sick, promising to do anything, Carlton proposed putting Madison in one of the retirement homes he owns, with him shouldering the costs of the room and medication if she agrees to do him a favor. Desperate, she agreed. Meanwhile, Carlton sneaks into Madison's room. He takes a photo of the sleeping Madison, who then wakes up. Hearing a man's voice, she gets alarmed, but she can't see who it is. The next day, after Michelle leaves to drive Lucy to school, Will angrily asks Melissa why she's there and demands that she leave because Michelle doesn't know about what happened between them yet. Melissa tells him that she was unaware that it was his house until she moved in and begs him to let her stay because her mom is sick. She swears she's not trying to break up his marriage. Since she's desperate for money, Will gives her 2 weeks to find a new job. Melissa visits Madison, who frantically tells her that a man was in her room and she's getting nightmares because of it. While getting ready for a party, Melissa accidentally walks into Will getting dressed. Yes, it's microscopic. At Richard's birthday party, Melissa is shocked when Michelle introduces her to Carlton, who happens to be Will's younger brother. Carlton's head is giving Megamind. Carlton tells Richard that he's ready to return to the business, but Richard tells him that he can't allow him to return just yet. Since Carlton says the retirement homes are doing well, Will encourages him to pour his energy and attention into that. When the family goes to talk to guests, Melissa confronts Carlton for not disclosing his relationship to the Clarks. She deduces that he's using her to get back at his family, to which Carlton angrily responds that his family still treats him like he's invisible. Carlton asks for updates, prompting Melissa to inform him that she still hasn't found Richard's house key and the alarm code because she hasn't had much time alone in the house since Michelle works from home. He then threatens to harm Madison if she doesn't get the job done. When the Clarks get home, Michelle asks Will if Carlton can be given a second chance because he's been stable for the last few years. Will says Richard put Carlton in the retirement homes to keep him out of the office and away from the deals because he was blackmailing their clients. He adds that he needs to keep it that way because he doesn't think Carlton will change. Meanwhile, Melissa receives the photo Carlton took of the sleeping Madison, along with a warning to force her to get the job done. To save her mom, Melissa urgently but quietly goes through the cabinets to look for Richard's house key and alarm code. When a picture frame falls, Michelle hears it, and because she's half white, Michelle decides to check what the noise is. Melissa finds Richard's house key and immediately hides in the closet so Michelle won't see her. After getting the duplicate for Richard's house key and the alarm code, Melissa returns the original. She then gives them to Carlton, who forces her to keep working for the Clarks, saying there are still things he needs her to do. Carlton is just jealous because he's the uglier brother. Later that night, Carlton sneaks into Richard's house with pills that would interact with Richard's prescriptions. While he's going through Richard's medication, Richard catches him. Carlton angrily confronts Richard for favoring Will over him and giving him control over the company. Richard says Will is the clear choice since he never gave him trouble. When he adds that Will is also a family man, Carlton tells him that Will is sleeping with the nanny Melissa. Consumed with rage, Carlton confronts him for doing nothing when Will swooped in and stole Michelle from him when Michelle was falling for him in college. I don't think Michelle was falling for that hairline. Richard angrily demands that he leave, otherwise he'll call the police. But then he gets a heart attack. He begs Carlton to help him and call an ambulance, but Carlton watches him die. The next morning, Will learns that Richard is dead. When Melissa hears about this, she bursts into tears, consumed with guilt. The next day, Melissa calls Carlton, knowing that he's for sure behind Richard's death, but Carlton is not answering. Shortly after, she sees Michelle receiving a call from Carlton, who checks on her. As Michelle and Melissa walk along Richard's favorite trail, Michelle shares that she and Will aren't close with Carlton, and the family can't rely on him. But when they head back home, Melissa finds a photo album titled Loving My Life, which contains photos of Michelle and Carlton. After Michelle informs her that Charlotte is showing signs of responsiveness, Melissa immediately calls another retirement home, planning to transfer Madison for her safety. Meanwhile, Amelia, a nurse in the retirement home Madison is in, discovers that Carlton is monitoring Madison, which is illegal. Because of this, Carlton eliminates her with his doucher. The next day, Melissa is alarmed to find Carlton talking to Madison in her room. Madison informs her that a nurse was killed in the parking lot last night, and Carlton is going around assuring residents' safety. Privately, Carlton confronts Melissa for talking to another retirement home and warns her that Madison will end up dead if she tries transferring her mom again. Melissa tells Carlton that Will is planning to come clean to Michelle, but Carlton instructs her to stay as their nanny. Later that night, Carlton, through the tracker he secretly attached to Melissa's car, sees that Melissa is heading to the cops. He immediately catches up and shows Madison's heart pills, without which she'll die. Scared, Melissa retreats. After the reading of Richard's will, Will becomes the new CEO. This pisses off Carlton, even though he's second in line. When Will gets home, he informs Melissa that he's planning to come clean to Michelle the next day. The next day, Carlton shows Michelle the photos of Will and Melissa swapping COVID. He says his friend, who is a bartender at the Blue Peak Bistro, sent him the photos. Meanwhile, after dropping Lucy off at her friend's house for her sleepover, Melissa begs Will to let her stay, but he refuses. Just when she's about to confess about Carlton, Michelle arrives and fires Melissa. Michelle shows them the photos and asks how long they've been baking cream pies. Melissa tries to explain that she was hired by Carlton, but Michelle interrupts, so Melissa is forced to leave. Will explains that he was drunk and it happened before Melissa moved in. He adds that it never happened again and they didn't bake in the house. Will deduces that someone might be setting him up because the photos and Melissa being the nanny is just too much of a coincidence. But Michelle demands that he and Melissa leave. On their way out, Will accuses Melissa of setting him up. A tearful Melissa explains that she cares about their family, but doesn't reveal the truth because the director wanted to create more tension. Melissa heads to Carlton's to inform him that Michelle fired her, and she begs that he spare Madison. Carlton reveals that he's the one who gave Michelle the photos, prompting Melissa to realize that he's doing all that because he's still in love with Michelle, and he wants Clark real estate. Carlton then orders her to stay in his house until everything is over and confiscates her phone so she won't talk to anyone. The next day, Carlton deduces that Will is staying at their dad's country house. After he tells Melissa that he'll confront Will there, he instructs her to get Richard's country house key. Melissa goes to the Clark residence and reveals to Michelle that Carlton is behind everything because he wants her to leave Will and he wants to take over Clark real estate. She also deduces that Carlton might have been behind Charlotte's attack and Richard's death. Carlton is an evil genius. That's why you can't ever trust anyone with an oversized forehead. After planning how to stop Carlton, Melissa returns to Carlton's house. Carlton then takes her with him to Richard's country house as leverage. Carlton reveals to Will that he's been the mastermind all along, and Melissa apologizes. He then reveals his plan to make it look like Will has spiraled because of Richard's death and his marriage failing, causing him to turn on his mistress before harming himself. When he's about to shoot Will and Melissa, Michelle arrives, breaks up with Will, and acts gently and sweetly to Carlton. Bringing his guard down with Michelle, Carlton admits that he was arguing with Richard when Richard collapsed and he left him to die. He adds that he needed to attack Charlotte because she was in his way. The cops, who have heard the entire confession, then swoop in to arrest him and confiscate his gun. Furious that Michelle played him, Carlton takes Michelle hostage, pointing a knife to her neck. Carlton then puts all the blame on Melissa, naming her as the mastermind.
If I can't have you, no one can have you.
Michelle forcibly steps on Carlton's foot, causing him to fall and release Michelle, who quickly runs to Will. Finally, the cops arrest Carlton. After confirming that Madison is okay, Melissa apologizes to Michelle, who forgives her since she understands that she didn't have a choice. Soon, Will and Michelle get back together, and Charlotte fully recovers. Melissa gets off for testifying against Carlton, who gets locked up. Are we sure Will isn't into Asians? He might be an equal opportunist, but luckily Charlotte is chopped. What did y'all think of this one? It was a Lifetime movie, hence the predictability and the cast being mostly whites. They couldn't even hire a biracial girl for their daughter.
If you like this video, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications because YouTube isn't recommending my videos. And if you would like to watch more foolishness, click here or here.